Hello, and thanks for joining us. My name is Chuck Payne. I'm the Director of the Partner Program here at AVG Business by Avast. Thanks so much for joining us today. We've got a great presentation lined up for you. We have two presenters that are going to be walking you through today's presentation. The first is Greg. Greg is thank you very much, Greg. Greg is our VP of Product and Engineering here, Greg Mosher. He's got a ton of experience in the industry, over 20 years leading development teams. In the 90s, he actually developed his own antivirus software. How cool is that? So he's going to walk us through the threat landscape and really where ransomware is right now, what we need to be concerned about, maybe what we don't need to be so concerned about, and so we focus our attention in the right direction. And following Greg is going to be Dean Nichols. Dean Nichols is the VP of Marketing at a really exciting company called Infrascale. If you guys aren't aware of that company, you have access to their products as a partner of AVG and Avast. So we're gonna talk about that solution. Dean's an expert at backup and disaster recovery as a service solutions that they offer. So he'll walk you through that, and more so, he's also an expert in helping you communicate the value of those solutions, because ultimately, if you're gonna adopt them, you need to sell them to your customers, market them and sell them. So he can really help you out there, and he'll give you some key tips on that. So our agenda for today is going to be going again over the ransomware landscape. That's going to be Greg. Then Dean's going to hop in. He's going to talk about Infrascale and that solution. We're going to go into the impact of the downtime, which kind of ties into how you're going to actually sell disaster recovery as a service solution. But before we get too much into that, let's ask your opinion on a few things, just to gauge where you guys are with ransomware and how it's affecting you. So when it comes to ransomware, which of these is you? You have clients that have been a victim of ransomware and lost some critical data. Do you have some clients that have been a victim of ransomware and actually paid the ransom demands? Or are you a lucky one individual and you've never had a customer have any security breach of that type, i.e. ransomware? So I'll give you guys a couple seconds to answer that, and we'll take a look at the results. Okay, interesting. Greg, you want to walk us through the results?
Yeah, so this is a little similar to what we saw earlier today out of more of our European customer base. So yeah, this is actually, it looks like, so overall a little bit less than 60% of our partners out there have actually had to deal with ransomware. And that pretty much, I think, is fairly consistent with some of the numbers that we've been seeing globally. I think obviously, service providers are probably seeing it a little bit more often as people come to them to solve problems. But really globally, last year we saw about 40% of businesses actually had some sort of ransomware encounter. So let's go ahead and jump into kind of where our trends are going in 2017. So, mentioned on that, obviously ransomware still being a big, big issue, and this is where we're going, kind of with the talk this afternoon. Just the big key here is that really we're seeing some different changes that are occurring in ransomware and sort of the delivery methods occurring this year. But, starting off, we'll say that spam and phishing is definitely still the primary attack vector. I mean, we certainly saw this in 2016. I mean, you're talking about, one of the biggest ransomwares that is out there was Locky, very prevalent, very widespread worldwide, and that ran off of really 9 different sort of kind of main phishing campaigns. We are seeing really the spam and the phishing evolving, though, to being more targeted, and we're actually seeing the threat actors actually really going after businesses by not only targeting essentially their spam and their email campaigns, but also whenever they deliver the malware to the actual target machines. The malware is actually smart enough that it's now trying to identify whether this is a business or not by looking to see whether there is a local network, by looking to see whether some of the content on the end machine tends to be more business related versus maybe being personal related. By doing some of that, it can actually then make some decisions and try to charge or basically extort more ransom out of a company than it would out of a person. So we've seen many examples of this, and we've seen a number of different sort of strains of malware. Obviously, WannaCry is a big one that we're just going to talk about in a second. Philadelphia is another one. I'm not going to cover it in detail on this talk, but that certainly was a ransomware that actually really appeared last year, but we've seen it even earlier this year in March actually really be part of a very, very specific spear phishing campaign actually targeted against hospitals, where essentially the email would be crafted, very, very good kind of local language, would actually have the logo of the institution, would have essentially, medical compliant documentations, would generally appear to be from another local medical facility within the same town or the same region. And like I said, it really did, it stepped up the game as far as attacking and affecting hospitals, which can often be, quite vulnerable. So, that's just something that's actually, I think it's a trend that we're just continuing to see as the threat actors become more sophisticated in their delivery of the malware and the ransomware. They really are targeting businesses. We've obviously seen some of the OAuth phishing attacks. I think most of you have probably encountered the Google Docs spam attack that actually was very, very short-lived because Google was able to cut it off. And really, it didn't contain necessarily anything particularly malicious outside of just accessing your account and trying to replicate itself by going through your contacts. But even a case like that still has impact because really, it's not necessarily the actual, say, always loss of data or necessarily like a ransom extorted. Most of the impact is actually its downtime and the lost revenue due to that. Just for an example, the Google Docs attack, when that happened, the state of Minnesota actually reported that they thought it cost them about $90,000. Now, maybe for a state government, it's not a huge amount of money, but that's still, that's real money. And the fact is, they don't even run Gmail or Google Docs or anything. They just took that and just by the number of employees that were impacted by just a few minutes each, there was a real impact to employees' time and downtime from that. But overall, we do see the impact to businesses continue to escalate. Certainly, 30% of all businesses that are hit with ransomware, we know roughly about a third are experiencing some sort of loss of income. And really, about 1/5 actually cease any sort of operation immediately, which means the business goes down for a period of time until they solve the issue, which means they're not transacting with the customers, they're not bringing in revenue, or they're not, providing services. And my most interesting stat here is really that I think is actually that about 60% of ransomware attacks are over 9 hours to remediate. And that's, and even that is whenever they kind of have the tools, they're managed to call in a service provider to basically come in and really help them. So that to me is a very, very significant number. Okay? So moving on, I want to talk a little bit about WannaCry. Obviously, you guys have heard about this, made lots of news, et cetera. And this was an interesting and maybe somewhat confusing piece of malware based on a lot of kind of the terms and the names that were thrown around. The fact that unpatched Windows operating systems tended to be much more vulnerable than other operating systems. So I kind of want to talk through that a little bit. First of all, this is a fairly standard piece of ransomware itself as far as the actual payload. Matter of fact, we at AVG, or at AVG Business by Avast, we had actually seen this, the Avast Threat Labs had seen this even as early as February. That's about the total number of countries in the world. We've seen 350 different variants identified. And, when we look at this, we were able to detect that really we saw a lot of the initial infections in Southeast Asia. And then from there, it just simply spread. I mean, one thing it would do is it actually would hit the outside, the internet, looking for basically vulnerable machines. But certainly on any sort of local network or any sort of machine maybe connected through a VPN, it could spread much faster because it had a much smaller subnet to actually go against. Now, what was unique about this is that this did not require any sort of action from the customer. I mean, it didn't mean they had to go to a website and get hit with a drive-by. They didn't have to open a spam or phishing, attachment or an email. There could be nobody at the machine that could actually get compromised. And that's because this spread through essentially a vulnerability that is actually in the Windows file sharing protocol, the server message block, otherwise known as the SMB protocol. And the vulnerability was actually, it originally belonged to the NSA. The NSA had a number of vulnerabilities that it was obviously hiding from everybody for doing whatever the NSA likes to do, and this stuff was leaked. And so you hear the term eternal blue. Eternal blue basically describes one of these vulnerabilities in the hack that actually that exploits the vulnerability itself. And that's exactly what WannaCry actually used to exploit machines and actually compromise machines and basically gain access to machines and drop itself on those machines itself. For the Microsoft patch, that is MS17010. You probably heard a lot about that. That was actually the patch that Microsoft actually distributed to patch against this particular vulnerability. That actually came out in early March, but we saw, particularly in businesses, how slow customers are sometimes to patch. And also, we noted really in that how many companies are now running out-of-date, unsupported operating systems. In particular, Windows XP, 8.0, Server 2003. Microsoft is not updating these operating systems anymore with patch. Matter of fact, as a result of WannaCry, they actually went back and kind of took an unprecedented move and patched some of those operating systems. But all of those were quite vulnerable. Now, we at Avast, I think, did a really, really solid job detecting this. We actually used a number of our technologies to really get this almost as a 0 day and basically detect these new variants before we'd even seen them, just when they first hit our customers. Used really a combination of our identity protection, which is now called our behavioral shield technology. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Some of our sandboxing techniques, some of our heuristic techniques. And then one last interesting stat on this, that regardless of kind of all the old operating systems that were vulnerable and even, there were some newer ones vulnerable, the vast majority, almost all of our detections we really saw were actually occurred on Windows 7, either with no Service Pack or Service Pack 1, so basically unpatched Windows 7. So where is this going? So there are some follow-ups to the WannaCry where we have some copycats, and actually not even really copycats, kind of improving on essentially what WannaCry did. So one of those is Adelcuz, and this is a little bit different. This is actually not a ransomware. This is actually something that does crypto mining. And what that means is it's actually generating cryptocurrency, but it needs your CPU to do it. So it is stealing from you. It's stealing resources from you. It's slowing your PC down. It's making it run hotter. It's setting you up for potential of a crash, and at the benefit of basically the threat actor itself. But anyways, it spreads the exact same way that WannaCry does, through the different vulnerabilities in the SMB. And we saw this one actually really a couple of weeks before WannaCry, and it blocked the number of infections. That number has continued to grow, although it's stayed at a fairly low level. It's not as prevalent as WannaCry, but it definitely shows you that there is now, I think, an evolvement of different techniques that the malware authors are using, not only to spread, but actually the payloads are changing some too. UI-Wix is another one. It is more of a traditional ransomware, but it actually really will execute directly in memory once the machine is compromised. So it's quite interesting, and the fact is that it's also, unlike the WannaCry, it's actually a much more robust piece of malware that once it gets onto your machine itself, it is well armored against a lot of the AVs. And so we do detect this, and we do detect this well, but it's really, we have to use a lot of different techniques to actually detect this, because it will try to determine whether it's in a sandbox. It will try to avoid researchers through virtual environments. It does hide itself, and actually it really just remains mostly resident in memory. So that actually makes it quite difficult. And then finally, I want to talk about Eternal Rocks. Eternal Rocks is actually another piece of malware that's spreading that currently does not actually have a malicious payload. But in fact, it is actually spreading really around the planet at this point, compromising machines. And the interesting thing about it is that it's actually using a large number. Really, it's just using about every single vulnerability that was identified in the NSA toolkit out there. So instead of just using really kind of 2 different techniques, it's actually using about 7 different techniques. And so it is really going around simply claiming machines. Likely what's going to happen is the threat actors, is they're owning these machines. They will then sell those machines to be part of, say, malware as a service, ransomware as a service, any number of kind of malicious, sort of projects that they may have in the future. Okay. So, that's a little bit of an update kind of on some of the recent ransomware stuff. I did want to take an opportunity, and if maybe some of you have heard our other webinars, you've seen a little bit of this. But as I mentioned, the AVG business and the Avast endpoint has done, a really solid job against WannaCry and these other sort of similar pieces of malware. And one of the reasons is really it's a lot of the great technology that we've managed to bring together between two AV companies. Where instead of taking and saying, okay, we're just going to choose one versus the other, we've actually really we brought together the best of both worlds because we knew that's what would give us the best AV going forward. And so I want to talk just about a couple of features that are in these. One, let's go ahead and flip. Yep. One of these, as I mentioned, is Behavioral Shield. And this was really one of the significant components that was actually really used to detect a lot of the new ransomware out there, and in particular the WannaCry. This is a technology that was in the AVG antivirus for quite some time, and it's now come forward and been enhanced within the overall combined endpoint between AVG and Avast. It does a great job of understanding what different sorts of applications are doing on your machine. It does a lot of both static and dynamic analysis. It actually collects quite a bit of metadata about the processes, sends it all back to our cloud, and through that massive real-time cloud that we have 240 million machines, 240 million desktops hooked up to, can actually see a real great picture of the world and the current threats that are going on, make very, very fast assessments, quick analysis, and it's how we go whenever we have a machine, some country, wherever you can pick, Southeast Asia, we see something, we say, hey, we think this is malicious. Sure enough, it's malicious. Now, all the rest of the 999 million desktops out there actually are now protected against it as well, because it all goes back to our full threat intelligence cloud. But this is really the component that does the work for us on the endpoints. The other one that I want to highlight, and this has been actually a technology that's been inside the Avast AV for a while that's now come together in the combined, something called Wi-Fi Inspector. And really the original kind of intent on this was more for home users, so that they could go out and they could see if they had maybe some misconfigurations in their Wi-Fi router. Maybe they were vulnerable. They possibly had an open password. We then extended it so that it was great for being able to detect maybe vulnerable IoT devices that, say, have been compromised in the past to form like the Mirai botnet or the Hajime botnet, which were big botnets that created some massive DDoS attacks last year. But more recently, it's now really shown its value in the case of, say, something like WannaCry. And in the screenshot there, I don't know how easy it is to see, but I mean, this is actually a live detection. We actually took a device and we actually, we hit it with WannaCry with Eternal Blue, and it actually dropped essentially the NSA drop tool called Double Pulsar, and we not only detect the fact that that machine was vulnerable, but we also detect the presence of Double Pulsar, which means that is a machine now set up to actually be compromised with WannaCry or whatever the adjacent pieces of malware that I described. So, this is something that can be run directly from the AV. It can scan the entire network and can be on demand, or it can actually be more on a schedule. It's a great thing to keep an eye, to actually do an assessment of what your network has in it right now, but also keep an eye on different machines that come into the network. People bring laptops into the office all the time, and this will help show you some of that vulnerability. Excuse me. Okay. So I think that's about that for me. So thanks for paying attention and just giving me a few minutes to give you an update on the ransomware. I'm going to turn it over to Dean now, which is going to give us really some great information about Infrascale and really how they kind of fit into this puzzle as well. All right, Dean.
Thanks, Greg. So good afternoon, good morning, everyone on the call. I'm going to spend a few minutes with you just telling you a little bit about who we are, what we do, and we're a disaster recovery and cloud backup company, and how we fit together with AVG to offer a pretty complete ransomware solution. And so part of my presentation will be just about explaining how our technology works, but part of it will also be how you can combine the story of AVG business and Infrascale to sell a whole lot more of these data protection solutions together. So Infrascale has been around for a while. We've been around since 2011. We're completely based on partners. About 95% of all our sales come directly through our channel partners. We're based in Los Angeles, and actually, even though it says 7 global data centers here, we actually have 15 now, and they span really all the 6 continents we have. One of the things that we're also fiercely proud of is that we've spent a lot of time on improving the quality of our technology, and you see that with some of the third-party validation that we're getting. Back in 2015, we were a Gartner Cool vendor for disaster recovery and business continuity. Last year in their MQ, the Magic Quadrant, we were a visionary, and actually the newest Magic Quadrant is actually coming out this week. We think it's going to come out today, the 2017 Magic Quadrant for disaster recovery as a service, and it looks like we're going to be a leader, which is puts us in a pretty select company. And so, by the way, if any of folks on the call want a copy of that Gartner Magic Quadrant report, just let us know in the Q&A tool, provide your email address, and let us know that you want a copy of that MQ, and we will send you a copy of the report later this week when we get it. So our mission at Infrascale is to eradicate downtime and data loss, so both of which are at play when we're dealing with ransomware. And we have 2 solutions that help us do that. We started off as a company focused on cloud backup. And so what that allows us to do is protect all of your data on laptops, on desktops, on even mobile devices, and store it and copy it directly to the cloud. It's really optimized for endpoints and branch servers, specifically physical servers. But it does include some ransomware detection, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Our second solution is our disaster recovery as a service solution, which is just called Infrascale Disaster Recovery. It's intended to protect your entire network, all your critical applications, your critical servers, whether they be physical or virtual. And again, what we're trying to do with our disaster recovery is restore operations in minutes, not hours, not days. But if there's a disaster, whether that be ransomware, whether that be a routine server outage, or whether it be a full site-wide failure, our disaster recovery can fail over your applications and virtual machines in minutes. So how does this work? I'm specifically going to talk about disaster recovery as a service. I think cloud backup solutions are pretty widely understood by most of the AVG partner base, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time just talking about disaster recovery as a service. So the way this works is, here you have your end user normally accessing their applications, all their data, and maybe some of their databases, and then ransomware strikes. And so, unfortunately, everything gets shut down. All the data becomes encrypted. And so what you can do with our DRAS solution, literally just push a button, and you can activate VMs from the most recent clean backups. And those backups of those VMs could be stored either on a local appliance or directly in the cloud. We can spin them up, we recover, we virtualize those VMs, and this happens in minutes, allowing your users to access those applications as if nothing had happened. We're averaging right now about 70 seconds is the time it takes us to fail over VMs. And on top of this, we've also layered in some new functionality called orchestration. And what orchestration allows us to do, it ensures that your critical servers, applications, and all their dependencies come online without incident. So we offer what we call drag and drop orchestration, which means you can literally determine which VMs come on in which order. So for example, you might want your AD server to come online first before you boot up Exchange. And you can lay that all out within our orchestration wizard. And so before any disaster ever strikes, you're going to have a plan in place for how you're going to spin up your VMs and which order, and even how much time it takes between spinning up the different VMs. This can be a huge time saver. So I want to talk a little bit and compare and contrast backup versus DRAS. Now again, we deal with both. But when it comes to ransomware, DRAS has some specific advantages over backup, and mostly in its time. Whoops, let me go back a slide. So let's take the case where ransomware strikes and it actually hits your SQL database or one of your client's SQL databases. So we're talking mission critical data, right? So the normal standard guidance is power down the machines, determine when the infection occurred, and then your IT folks or your client's IT folks have quickly got to figure out how to rebuild those servers on the fly. And while they're doing this, typically all of their end users are down. and they can't access those databases. They have to reconfigure the database services. They then have to restore clean database files from a backup. And again, if that's from a cloud backup, that could take time, depending on your network connectivity. And then you have to inject the old database from the restored backup to the new hardware, and then establish connectivity. In a best case scenario, this whole process will take you 4 to 5 hours. If the database is part of a larger cluster, you can multiply that by the number of machines on the cluster. So it can take a long, long time. With DRAS, in the bottom graphic, all you need to do is obviously power down the machine. Determining the date and time is actually quite a bit easier with DRAS, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. As an IT administrator or as the partner, you can quickly log into the dashboard and then boot up the VM and or the orchestration sequence, and you can be up in minutes or seconds, which is what we're averaging. And so one of the things that Greg mentioned early on was that the average amount of downtime from ransomware was 9 hours. There's another stat out there that suggests that the average cost per minute of downtime is somewhere between $2,500 and $5,000 per minute. And that obviously depends on the kind of organization, the size of the organization we're talking about, right? But it adds up really fast. Take 9 hours times 60 minutes times even $1,000 a minute. It is an expensive proposition. Now, everything we talked about here for ransomware is also true when it comes to any other kind of outage. So there could be a routine server outage, Exchange crashes. You can get up and running in seconds with that as well. If it's a site-wide disaster or tornado rips through your office park, you can also do the same thing, and you can restore those VMs either locally, and if a tornado strikes, you'll probably have to rely on the cloud to do that. But the important thing is you can do it from either place. You're not restricted from only backing up or restoring from a local on-premise appliance. You can also do it from the cloud. Completely up to you. So now let's talk about how that actually manifests itself in a real-life case study. Last November, one of our partners, Pervasive Solutions, who's based out of the Northeast, they had 2 customers that were infected by ransomware within 24 hours of each other. One was a retailer, and they had just a cloud backup solution in place. The other was a manufacturer, the right column, who had DRAS in place. They were both protecting a fair amount of data. So the retailer had 35 to 40 terabytes, the manufacturer had 10 to 15. The biggest difference as you scan through these columns is the amount of time it took to restore operations. So for the retailer, it took them a full 2 to 3 days to get some of their operations back online, but a full 2 weeks to become fully restored. With the manufacturer, they were able to restore in less than an hour. The other telling thing here is the amount of man-hours spent. With the retailer, it was 320 hours. Most of those hours were spent by the MSP. This MSP charges their customers on an hourly basis, right? Or sorry, on a monthly subscription basis. So any profit that the MSP had with the retailer was quickly evaporated with this one attack, because they have to spend so many of their own IT folks' time and resources just to try to recover the retailer and bring them back to operations. That was time and money they could have been spending on revenue-generating activity that they couldn't do. Whereas the manufacturer was able, through their partner, to restore operations very, very quickly. So what are some of our differentiators at Infrascale? So I mentioned one, we're a leader, and that does put us in some rarefied company. One of the things that also sets us apart is we're the only vendor that actually puts our money where our mouth is, and we offer a 15-minute or less guarantee. That means if we can't bring your system back online within 15 minutes, there's remuneration, there's a cost that we have to pay. No one else does that in our space. So what also sets us apart? Well, as a partner and as an MSP or a VAR, you should probably care about these things because you're serving customers with mixed environments. We protect all devices, so that covers mobile devices, desktops and laptops, and both physical and virtual servers. And we do this across over 100 different versions of operating systems, from Windows to Apple to VMware, Hyper-V, all the virtualized OSs, Unix, Linux as well. In addition to that, we offer complete flexibility where your data or your client's data gets stored. So we have over 15 global data centers. We also give you the option to store it within a private cloud. And we even have the flexibility to store the data within popular third-party clouds like Google Cloud or Amazon or Azure as well. And so complete flexibility. The price doesn't change only to the extent that if you're leveraging a third-party cloud, there may be additional fees that you have to pay the cloud provider. This just shows a handful of some of our customers that hopefully we're keeping happy, from PwC to Pepsi and Comcast. And then we service a lot of other companies as well, again, through our channel base. Some of the verticals that we're especially strong in are financial services, healthcare, SLED, which is state and local education. And these are typically the same organizations that are somewhat vulnerable to ransomware because they often lack a lot of the IT resources. So when you start looking at Infrascale and start comparing them to other DRaaS solutions, these are a few of the things that set us apart. We've talked about the different types of systems that we cover and the OSs that we support. We offer the 15-minute guarantee. We actually publish our benchmarks. That is, we publish all the failovers on a public-facing website as they happen. We obviously hide the names to protect the innocent. But every failover that we do, whether it be a test recovery or a real-life failover situation, we publish that, and that's when I say we're doing this within 70 seconds on average. That's where that comes from. We also have built-in orchestration and workflow, which I briefly described. And part of that workflow is actually the ability to build and rebuild a network when disaster strikes. So not only are we helping you determine the order and the sequence of the VMs that need to be booted, but we're also rebuilding the network from scratch. And so all of your users have access to the network and the applications at the same time, and that's all baked into our solution. We do offer a true subscription model. That means everything is baked into the subscription price, even the cost of the hardware. So the hardware, the setup, the configuration, the support is all baked into that price. There aren't any additional fees. And then, unlike some other folks in this space, we do offer unlimited use, and that includes unlimited tests and a limited number of disaster days. Many vendors will charge incrementally for every time you have to fail over. That's part of our solution, and that's also part of our mission. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Charles for our next poll. Charles, are you on mute?
Sorry, I'm mute again. Okay, time for another poll. So how confident are you in your DR capabilities currently? Do you think you can fail over within 15 minutes? Do you think you're prepared for a disaster, but you're not unsure of the failover time? Do you think you could recover a single application only if you needed to? Or you're really not sure? Give you guys a couple minutes to fill that in, well, a couple seconds to fill that in, and we'll take a look at the results. Okay, let's take a look. Interesting. Dean, you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, this is fairly typical of our partner base. So it looks like 20% of you guys can already fail over within 15 minutes, which is great. It looks like another almost 56% of you are prepared for disaster but unsure of the failover time. And then, let's see, we could fail over a single application, so that's smaller percentages, and another 20% or 18% aren't sure. Okay, that's kind of what we normally see out there. And so, okay, that's helpful. Okay, let's go. I'm going to change gears a little bit now and talk a little bit about how to best sell ransomware protection. So one of the things that we think it's really a three-legged stool when it comes to ransomware. There's really the front end, which is the AV protection, and that's not just signature-based. It's all the good stuff that Greg talked about during his section. It's really the user education. So how can your users or your clients' users educate their end users to avoid phishing attacks, which again is the #1 vector when it comes to ransomware. And then the third prong of the attack is how can you protect just in the case that your clients do get infected, right? Because even the best laid out measures can still get infected, right? So you need to have an insurance policy, and we think DRaaS is that insurance policy. So this isn't just a matter of downtime for your end customers. This actually, ransomware imposes a pretty heavy tax for MSPs. I gave you the example of pervasive solutions before with the manufacturer and the retailer. When you have to dedicate 2 or 3 of your IT staff to work full-time on recovering systems and operations and trying to make sure no data was actually lost, and they're working around the clock, that isn't the best use of their time. Now, what some partners like Pervasive have subsequently done is they're actually baking DRaaS into their subscription model. So what they're doing is saying, listen, to be a partner, to be a customer of ours at Pervasive, and to sign up for the subscription, you must have AV protection. You must have our DRaaS solution in place. And they've baked that into their monthly subscription fee. And they've also taken a fair amount of time to educate their customers about the value of having front-end AV protection, as well as the importance of having an insurance policy. Because they don't want to have their margins eviscerated, right, as a result of a ransomware attack and them having to spend just ridiculous amounts of man-hours to try to recover all that data. So there are other ways, with the combination of AV and DRaaS, other ways for partners like you to make money. So these are just 3 ways. One is doing a ransomware audit, and we can help you collectively do this. This is where you can help train the users and how you can even do simulated phishing attacks. And there are actually vendors out there that will do essentially a fake phishing attack with your clients just to see which of your users, downstream users, are actually clicking on the links that they shouldn't be clicking on. And to give away the punchline, 9 times out of 10, it's one of the executives at your client customers. They're the ones that are clicking on the links that they should not be clicking on. And so we also bake in something that we call anomaly detection. That's actually part of our cloud backup solution. And what it does is, because we know we're backing up files all the time, I'll use Greg in as example. If Greg normally modifies 15 files in the course of a day, and on his most recent backup, we notice that 1,000 files have been modified, we send an alert right away to the partner or to the IT admin to let you guys know something fishy is going on, and you're probably a victim of ransomware. And we even let you determine the thresholds, whether that's if things change within 10, 15% of established benchmarks. So instead of 1,000, you could say if it goes to 100, you can get alerted to that in real time. And the reason that anomaly detection is so important is when it comes to recovering from a ransomware attack, you need to know when the ransomware attack happened. So you can go back in time to the most recent backup that you did that's clean and restore your data from that clean point in time. To our knowledge, there's very, very few vendors that offer that anomaly detection, and that's baked into our service as well. You can also do DR testing and do DR audits as well. In the middle column, you have security audits, right? So together with AVG, you can offer your clients a full security audit, which looks at taking a multi-layered approach to ransomware protection. You can do a lot of messaging security involving email filtering. You can do a lot of data security audit. There's a lot of services that you can bake in for incremental margin. And then lastly, you can do, even though we bake it in as part of our service, you can charge for your DR and failover testing. You can even help work on your client's orchestration scripting and turn that into a chargeable service. So these are 3 additional ways to make money. And again, we're happy to talk with you through these if you decide to help sell our solution. Okay, so what is our pricing? This pricing that you see in front of you is our MSRP pricing. And so most of our partners get roughly 30% margin from these prices. Everything that we do is based on a per terabyte basis. Okay, so for our cloud backup, it's $142 per terabyte. And again, that includes everything. That includes the installation, configuration, support, everything. And we do offer unlimited versions as well. With disaster recovery, it's $189, and that again includes the on-premise appliance, cloud seeding if it's required, unlimited DR tests and declarations, etc. So it does currently require a one-time fee based on the amount of data that needs to be protected. Again, these are MSRP prices. But this is a very, very simple way to sell the service. And it takes a lot of the risk out of like missizing appliances, and just makes it really simple for you and your customers to have this conversation. On this slide is just a handful of some of the assets that we've built to help our partners resell our solutions. So currently, AVG and Avast have their set of guidance around how do you protect your clients. We also have our set of kind of co-marketing tools, and these include, for example, we created a website. It's called areyouasofttarget.com, and feel free to check it out. It's really meant for you to walk through with your clients 10 questions to see how ripe a target they are for ransomware. And then we've also created a number of co-brandable assets and white papers that you can use to help support this set of solutions. Now, most of these solutions are really focused on how do you mitigate downtime, because this is really telling about the DRAS story. But what we're also doing is we're working with Avast to create some joint guidance, some joint best practices that talk about how you can leverage AVG together with Infrascale's DRAS solution to offer a truly comprehensive ransomware protection story. And so you can expect that in the next week or so. We're developing that kind of joint guidance as we speak. And I think, so as far as your next steps, if this sounds intriguing, let us know. The first step here is we're actually working on this infographic as we speak, but it's a good asset to share with your downstream customers, and we're going to get that into your hands as soon as possible. If you're interested in learning more about our solution, again, just let us know. We have another poll question coming up here that'll give you the opportunity to do that. What's going to happen next, if you say, I'm interested in learning more about your DRAS solution, is you'll work with your account manager at Avast, and they will set up an appointment and work through your needs. And that will include both really bringing you up to speed on disaster recovery as a service, but also working through some co-marketing guidance as well. And then we'll also then share some of the joint best practices and tips that I talked about earlier. So with that, I think we're on to our final poll question.
Great. Thanks for that, Dean. Great presentation. So back to the audience. We'd like to know if you'd like to learn more about the Infrascale disaster recovery solution, maybe just a cloud backup solution, or maybe a combination of both those solutions. Just go ahead and please let us know. And while you're typing that in, please also feel free to add your question to the Q&A widget in the bottom of the screen. I noticed that we've got quite a few in there, so maybe we'll just work our way from the top down to the bottom. So yeah, it looks like there's a few in here that wanted to get that Gartner report. Again, if you're interested in getting that Gartner report, just leave your email address, or just say you're interested. Actually, we already obviously have your email address because you're registered for this event. So just say that you're interested. We'll be able to sync that up to you and send it out when it's available later in the week. Got a question about the Wi-Fi detector and if it's available through the CloudCare software. Not currently. It will be. It's going to be available in that unified AV product that Greg alluded to. That's going to be a combination of all the technologies, all the best of the technologies from AVG, with all the best of the technologies from Avast. That's going to be available in pretty much all the products, well, not pretty much, it's going to be available in all the products that we have, the Managed Workplace RMM product, the CloudCare product, as well as that new AV product, and there'll be a couple different versions that you'll be able to choose from. The Wi-Fi inspector tool, is it free? Yeah, it's going to be added. It's a feature of all of when it's added to all the different solutions that we have. I should say when the new antivirus product is available, it'll be available in all of the different iterations of that antivirus product. So it's just going to be a base feature. As well, it'll find its way in the Managed Workplace and the CloudCare products as well. A couple questions, Dean, for your people, I think. So in the event of a real disaster and the appliance is destroyed, how soon can we get a replacement appliance?
Yeah, thanks,
great.
Charles.
So, go ahead.
I was going to introduce, there's a new voice you're going to hear, and that's Daniel Covey. He's one of our talented sales engineers. And for anything that involves anything techie, I'm going to defer to him. So I'm going to defer this question to you, Daniel.
All right, perfect. So replacement devices are normally overnighted. So unless there's some sort of special configuration with the appliance that you have on site, overnighted to you, set up, ready to go the next day.
Okay, thank you very much. Got another question here. So if a local appliance is down, can I spin up VMs from the cloud? Is that a feature of the software?
Absolutely. So you're able to boot those machines or spin those VMs up in our cloud and access them through a VPN that we provide to you in a road warrior configuration.
Okay, excellent. Another question here is, how do you guys compare to Datto?
That's a long answer, so I'll give a couple of quick talking points about that, and we're happy to answer them more on other calls as well. But main points is we go to multiple clouds. So we go to AWS, Azure, the Infrascale cloud itself. We do private deployments in your own data centers, as well as our orchestration, which is the piece that Dean had gone over, which allows you to set up your DR testing as well as full DR scenarios, as well as the unlimited testing that comes with that. So you can DR test as many times as you want. You don't need to contact us to kick off any DR tests. It's all at the hands of the users or the partners so that they can do that without having to include Infrascale with that. The 15-minute failover guarantee, as Dean said, nobody else is offering that with our sub 15-minute boot times on our machines. So those are some of the main points that we like to use.
Okay. I got a question also for you guys. It says, is your cloud or DRAS solution for SMBs?
Yeah, so for SMBs, enterprise, we run the whole gamut. They're available for everybody.
Okay, cool. Another one for you guys. Maybe this is one more for Dean. Do you offer any co-marketing support beyond co-branded collateral?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do a number of things with our partners really aimed at generating leads to their doorstep. And I know for a lot of partners, they're probably rolling their eyes and they've heard that before. But one of the things we do is we do webinars just like this with our partners. And the intent of this is to drive either new customers, new prospects to the webinar and truly generate leads for the customer. And so we do these all day long. And that's one of many. We also offer MDF funds. So if you're looking to do a small in-person event at a steakhouse, we will absolutely help sponsor that and probably pay 50% of it, more if you get more people. And so there's a variety of different campaigns we'll do with you, and those include emails as well. And we'll do everything in our power to, if it's a webinar or an event, to also help drive actual attendees there as well. So that's not just on you. We'll take an active role in helping drive the right people to your event.
Okay. I think we got another technical question for you guys. Can you explain how orchestration works?
Sure. So the way orchestration works is it's drag and drop, so you're able to choose from a list of your machines that you have available for booting, put those into specific groups, so clusters, maybe you want to have your Active Directory server boot first, wait 5 minutes for all the services to come up and run, and then boot your Exchange cluster all at once, wait another 5 minutes, and then have your file server and so forth boot. So it's a very simple wizard, again, drag and drop, so that you're able to predetermine boot sequencing, and then all you have to do is once that template is created is just click run anytime you want to do a test or anytime you're actually in a DR scenario, and all those machines will boot in the order that you designated.
Got it. Okay. Another question is, what's the minimum bandwidth connection to use your service, and what do you recommend?
Sure. So as far as minimum is concerned, we don't really have a minimum that we like to lay out. And the reason being is because we have customers backing up from T1 lines. We have customers backing up on fiber. So minimum that we like to see is 5 megabytes, but it's really going to depend on each site, their change data rates and so forth. But somewhere around maybe 5 megabytes is kind of on the low end.
Okay. Another question, another technical question for you guys. Does your solution protect SQL databases?
Absolutely. We protect SQL, Exchange, and a whole host of other applications as well.
Okay. Another question is, how are you protecting data from malware during upload and download from the cloud?
So as far as malware
for Datto.
One more time?
Excuse me, for Infrascale, of course. I'm assuming that's a question for Infrascale.
Right. Yeah. So as far as the Infrascale solution goes, we're not protecting against malware in any sort of antivirus manner. What we're doing is we're making sure that the data is captured and saved off-site in a bootable format. So we're still capturing data, and then if you find that there is malware, you have unlimited retention policies or unlimited versions within your retention policy that you can restore from once you've discovered that you do have malware.
Yeah, and let me add a little bit of color to what Daniel just said. This is Dean again. This is kind of an interesting use case. So, for example, we had that very same partner that I talked about earlier, Pervasive Solutions, who had a couple clients infected within 24 hours of each other. When the customer that had DRAS solution, they actually leveraged the DRAS solution to determine which of their VMs were clean, because at that point they couldn't determine which VMs were actually infected. And so what they did was something kind of novel. They essentially spun up the VM, and in this case it was a SQL database. And if the VM didn't spin up properly, you could make the assumption that it was also infected. When the VM did spin up and the application started, they knew that they had a clean VM. So even in the boot sequence, you can use that as a way to determine how far back you need to go to find a clean copy of your VM, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think we've cleared the Q&A. So I think at this point we're going to wrap things up. Thank you so much to the presenters, and of course thank you so much to the audience. Great questions. We really enjoyed being able to present this to you guys. Thanks so much. Just look for a follow-up email from your account manager. Thanks again.